Can I start? Now, Mr. and Madam Speaker, assuming that today is the future, we believe that time is able to be sold or bought under today's motion. And as much as time is able to be sold or bought within the market, we believe that time is an extremely valuable thing, Mr. and Madam Speaker. So we believe that there should be freedom in terms of wealth, how to utilize your own time, how to utilize your own wealth, Mr. and Madam Speaker. And that is why we believe that it is their own autonomy. And secondly, we believe that our policy will actually bring certain benefits in a society where time is able to be sold or bought, where we have the technology to do so. We tell you that it will increase the value of time in many different ways, and it will maximize efficiency as well, as we will explain further on during our arguments. But before we move on to any of our arguments, we want to first of all clarify a few things regarding the model and the definition. So we want to define today's policy that the government side promotes as by the meaning of selling and buying this time. We believe that the price of time will differ per person. What we mean by this is that we're going to apply the standard that the profit that you make, the pure profit that you make through your job during that time that you sold, that average amount of profit that you're going to make during the time that you sold is actually going to be the amount of time that you receive for the time that you sold. So what we mean by this, to give you an example, is that for instance, if you're a doctor and if you made a certain amount of profit in that time, then we believe that if you sell your time like that, then you're going to receive the same profit that you made, assuming that you did not sell the time. So we believe that this will be proportionate per person. No, thank you. We believe that if you don't have a job, you're not going to be paid. So if you don't have a job, you're not going to be paid. That is why we believe that it will maximize effectiveness in terms of utilizing time. So we believe that it will differ per your wealth, differ per the amount of money that you're going to make, even though you didn't sell the time, assuming that you didn't sell the time. And we're going to also keep a regulation, the government regulation, like X hours and Y months. Like we're going to keep a regulation that you can only sell a few days within a month to decrease the gap and limit the gap between the rich and the poor that the opposition side is probably going to talk about in today's debate. So we're going to prove to you 4 arguments today. Firstly, about how the freedom to utilize time and the wealth is up to the individual's economy. Secondly, how it actually increases the value of time. And our Deputy Prime Minister is going to prove to you how, firstly, the black market is going to decrease, and secondly, how it's going to lead to more efficient usage of time, which is extremely beneficial for the society. So I want to directly move on to our first argument. How is the people's freedom to utilize their own time and their own wealth? We believe that in the status quo, you have your autonomy over your own time because of 2 reasons. Firstly, you have autonomy over your own time and wealth. So it's 2 analysis. Firstly, why you have freedom over your own time in the status quo. We believe that in the status quo, the government does not intervene, and you have the freedom to choose your own activities that you want to do in your own time. For instance, you can work. For instance, you can play sports, or you can even travel around in the world. For instance, we believe that even in the status quo, you can do different jobs, even though you work in the same category. We believe that you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, or you can work at a convenience store, and that is up to your own autonomy. And we believe that the government has no authority to intervene because of the concept of bodily autonomy. We believe that it is principally right to implement our policy because we believe that this is also a way of utilizing your own time like we allow in the status quo. So moving on to our second point of analysis, how you actually have the freedom over your own wealth in the status quo and how that is related to our policy. I'm telling you that freedom is guaranteed because the wealth that you have is currently accumulated by yourself. And you can use it anywhere. You can use your money anywhere unless it is for illegal purposes such as drugs. And we believe that the reason for this is because we consider meritocracy, in which you worked hard to gain your money and to gain more money, and you worked less hard to have less money, and we believe that you had your own autonomy over this, and that was purely your achievement. So we believe that your freedom to use your own money for your own benefit is protected in the status quo. We believe that that should also be protected under buying and selling time, because it is also a way of using your wealth and your wealth that you have accumulated through your own effort. So we believe that the freedom to utilize the time and wealth should be protected even in terms of time, because we proved to you why there is no exclusiveness, because we already do that in the status quo, because we already protect concepts such as bodily autonomy and meritocracy in the status quo. So now moving on to our second argument, how it actually increases the value of time. We believe that in the status quo, money is extremely valued because, firstly, it's the fundamental basis of life, and secondly, because you can utilize it for many various purposes, Mr. and Madam Speaker. We believe that when a price tag is put on something, we believe that this is actually more valued when a price tag is not put on a certain item. And moreover, when you have more price on a certain item, we believe that there is actually more value because it emphasizes the idea of scarcity. And in all these aspects, we believe that that this sends out the social message that time is actually valuable if we implement our policy. Because time becomes precious. You know that this money can be, you know that your time can be utilized by selling it and just receiving simple money, and could be sold, Mr. Madam Speaker. They all know the possibility of that. No, thank you. And that is the exact reason why we believe that time is because the saying that time is money and time is gold becomes more relevant to life. Because it actually happens in the reality. And we believe that you believe that the body will be used to make the same amount of money if you didn't sell that time. So we tell you that it actually increases the value of time in that regard. And secondly, we tell you that this is also very effective in terms of giving the right price, giving the right value to these kinds of times, because we believe that under our model, we are actually going to make the price differ and tailored towards each person, so that their time is valuable according to their own position. So we believe that it's actually increasing the value of time, and we tell you that that's extremely beneficial, because then you can use the money efficiently. Then you can use then you can use your own time in the way that you actually have to be, instead of just wasting your time like we already see in the status quo. We tell you if we actually sell that and put a price tag on the time itself, we believe that it actually gives certain benefits to society by allowing people to be more productive. So today we proved to you 2 points about, firstly, how the people have the freedom to utilize their own time and wealth. Secondly, how it actually increases the value of time in our policy. And we believe that our Deputy Prime Minister is also going to prove to you how it increases efficiency in other regards as well. And secondly, about how the black market problem decreases, assuming that this is the future. And that is why we believe that that is why we are very proud to propose.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, what the government side was basically saying is that they can ensure the value of the time with their policy, and this will lead to benefits. However, we don't find any benefits from their policy. However, this will lead to actually more harms. And during the opposition side's speech, we would like to prove out how this will actually lead to back harms. So before I move on to my arguments, I would like to have rebuttals to the proposition side. So first of all, they have said that it's people's absolute freedom to use their time. However, we believe that this is actually can be restricted because it leads to the back harms, which will be proven by me. Well, we believe that it sends out the social message that time isn't that valuable, and people with considering their wealth, time can be considered differently. So we believe that since it sends out the social message, which is considered to be totally unequal and unvalid, we believe that people's freedom can be restricted in this sense. And secondly, they have said that wealth is also one's autonomy, and they have explained it like that wealth is only achieved by one's trying hard. However, we believe that that's not the case. And moreover, their case will actually lead to more vicious cycle and more gap between the poor and the rich, which will be explained in my first argument. No, thank you. And moreover, they have talked about how time can be more valued with their policy because they're having a price tag in the time. However, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this is totally nonsense. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, time is considered to be very important, actually important than money these days. However, they're saying that they will actually lessen the value of time as just of money. And secondly, we believe that value appears when it is only limited, ladies and gentlemen. But what they're simply saying is that they will give they will allow the sale of the time, and therefore this will not make the time as a limited resource, and people will also actually not think time as a very important factor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to move on to my arguments. We have several arguments to support our stance, but mainly, as a Prime Minister, I would like to point out two arguments, which is first about inequality and secondly about social message. So first about inequality, we have mainly two things to explain here. So first, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that time is the most objective standard. Well, nothing is more equal than time. Well, this is the motto we always hear. And we believe that this is because time is given to the people equally, because people have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. And we believe that this is actually the very equal standard given to the people. Now, it is especially important matter in the society with best equality, because first, it is offered with same amount, and secondly, it applies to everyone in the world. And therefore, we believe that it is very important standard in the current status quo. Moreover, moreover, this is especially important in evaluating one. Ladies and gentlemen, time is actually given to everyone. But let's say that you're having a test next week and you need more time to study. Well, then you'll eventually buy more time to get more advantage, and we believe that this will act totally unfairly. And therefore, we believe that if time is allowed to sell or to buy, the fairness of the time has the characteristic of the time, which is equality, will be totally ignored. Now, secondly, about the vicious cycle, we believe that in their motion, they're actually targeting the poor in their motion. So we all know that time is important, ladies and gentlemen. If someone offers you to sell a time, well, nobody won't eventually, because we know that it is important. However, the opposition find that there is a victim in this policy. Well, we believe that the main victim is actually the poor. Well, the government side has said that there will be restrictions in buying and selling the course, buying and selling the time. However, we believe that poor, since they need to earn money, and since poor need the profit, they will actually have. Even though there is a restriction, they will constantly try to buy it, and moreover, they will be the biggest victim in this policy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this creates a very vicious cycle, because poor who have less time, poor who have less money will have no choice to just sell their time, and this creates the rich. They have more time to actually develop themselves and improve themselves. However, poor, on the other hand, at the same time, they are working and they are actually lacking in the current status quo of utilizing their time. We believe that they will also have less time than before in this policy. So we can conclude that this policy actually sacrificed the poor for the rich, but not just only sacrificing. Government is just saying to those poor people that their time is useless, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe the rich will be the only one who can enjoy the luxury of this motion, ladies and gentlemen. So secondly, about the social message, well, you all value your time's rights, and that's why people all have their plans, schemes, and schemes for their future terms. And why? Because they want to use their time in the most effective way. And however, this policy actually ignores the whole thought of this idea. Now, how will people who can't afford for this money will use time? Well, they will eventually use this time without any plans or any idea that time is important. Well, we believe that the social message we have today, which is first, time is important. Secondly, you should always do your best living in your lives, is totally ignored. And therefore, the only impression people will get is that if you are affordable, you can't use time in any way. And therefore, what happens is that such negative effects, message appears, and obviously people will forget the value of time or lives. Therefore, I'm very proud to oppose. 6 minutes and 5 seconds.
Mr. Madam Speaker, as the second Speaker of the Opposition bench, I want to make 2 points of extension about the efficient use of the time, and also about how we prevent the black market. But before I do so, I'd like to simply rebut to what the previous Speaker has spoken. Now, she told us about how there are the harms, so it is not justified. So there are only rebuttal to our justification is that there are the harms. Now, first of all, about how the time is. We told you that the price tag at the time will be according to the productive work and the salary that you're going to get through that time. Because they told us about how the time is important. We're not valuing the importance of the time. Number one, we do agree that the time is important, but the importance of time do differ between individual, Mr. Madam Speaker. We think that we're going to respect the subjective view of each people who think that the time is really important and who think the time is not really important, Mr. Madam Speaker. And that is because that is why there is the difference between the productivity of each individual people, Mr. Madam Speaker, is we're going to respect the subjective view about how much the time is important in our model. They also told us about how the time is the equality standard. And number one, why do we do have the bodily autonomy? We do have every human being have the same body, and that is the equal standard that is given to all humanity in the world. But there is different labor, Mr. Madam Speaker. There is different labor. There is different productivity, and people use their body and people use their labor for different uses and for different productivity. And that is something that is given equally to all humanity, but that is used differently, Mr. Madam Speaker. And applying that same logic, we think that time time is given equally to everyone, but people utilize it differently already in the status quo by doing this productive work or unproductive work, Mr. Madam Speaker. So we're going to use that logic so that we're going to give the freedom of the user utilizing the time for their own sake in this today's model. And also, why is it bad, Mr. Madam Speaker? There was no analysis or logic coming out from the opposition side why the equality standard of the time is bad. Again, we're going against the equality standard, and there was no analysis of why that is bad under our model. Now, told us about now then let's look at the harms that makes our model unjustified. They told us about the vicious cycle, about the victims how the victims are the poor people. Mr. Madam Speaker, I'm going to further elaborate on my third argument, how the poor people are actually incentivized to become a productive worker. And also, Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that the government's responsibility is to provide a job pool at the first place. So if these poor people are not being unproductive workers, Mr. Madam Speaker, that is the government's responsibility to increase the job pool and increase the social mobility. And that is a different debate. We do think that in the status quo, the government is working very hard to increase the social mobility and increase the job pool for the poor people. So that is not our burden to prove about how the poor people are going to be unproductive, and it is the poor people are the victims. They told us about how we're going to use the time very inefficiently. But Mr. Madam Speaker, I'm going to because my third argument is the efficient use of time, that is going to rebut to directly clash with their argument, and also because it is money. This is directly relating to your salary. This is directly relating to your money, Mr. Madam Speaker. That is why these people are going to use the time in the maximum efficiency and maximum effectiveness, Mr. Madam Speaker. And they told us about how the wealth is not determined by only the wealth effort. Mr. Madam Speaker, our price tag is not by the wealth, but by the productive salary, the pure productive salary that you get through a certain portion of time, Mr. Madam Speaker. So it's not about the wealth, the fortune, like if you ride the BMW or Bench. It's not about that, but how much you earn, how much pure profit you earn through a 1 hour or 2 hour or a certain portion of time, Mr. Madam Speaker. And also about the private education. You get the private education, and private education gives you an advantage in the test. So that's also related to wealth, Mr. Madam Speaker. So are you going to ban the private education, which is related to wealth, Mr. Madam Speaker? Now let's move on to the last two arguments. The first is about the efficient use of time. We told you in our model that the price of the time will be according to the money that the seller could have earned through the productive business, labor, or any forms of work. So when I work, for instance, if I want to sell my time for 1 hour, if I do productive work, I will earn 100만 won, and the labor price is 10만 won. So the pure profit is after all 90만 won, Mr. Madam Speaker. So if I sell the 1 hour for 1 hour of time for 90만 won, Mr. Madam Speaker, if I'm a person that does not work very hard, is not a productive worker, and I drink like alcohol during the work time, I like chat with my friends during the work time, Mr. Madam Speaker, if I'm that kind of an unproductive worker, Mr. Madam Speaker, at the first place, I do not have the incentive to utilize my time very efficiently and very effectively, Mr. Madam Speaker. But now, let's say that there is a person A who is a very productive businessman that contributes to the nation's benefit, Mr. Madam Speaker. Now, this person A wants to buy my time of 1 hour for 90만 won, Mr. Madam Speaker. This person A has the guarantee that this person is a productive worker because he is already a productive worker, but the only limit to this person A is that there is limit of time, Mr. Madam Speaker. So then I'm going to sell my 1 hour for 90만 won, the pure profit that I could have earned for 1 hour, to this person A who is going to maximize the time, utilize that time for the maximum efficiency and maximum effectiveness for productive work, Mr. Madam Speaker. So at the end of the day, there is the same and fair distribution of the money, but there is the maximization of the productiveness and the efficiency of the use of time, Mr. Madam Speaker. So we're going to contribute to overall benefit to the whole nation. And the poor people do not get the disadvantage. Poor people anyway does not have the incentive to sell the time at the first place because they do not have any profit when they use 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour. Because these people do not have the job at the first place, when they sell the time, Mr. Madam Speaker, they do not get any profit for selling the money, selling the time. So there is no benefit for these poor people. There is no incentive for the poor people to sell the time at the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker. So then these people are going to try to use their time for the productive work. So we're going to increase the job pool, we're going to increase the social mobility for the poor people to utilize their time for the productive work, because anyways they cannot sell the time at the first place. So for this reason, we're more than happy to oppose. So
Mr. and Madam Speaker, basically with the government team's policy, what they're making is that they're saying that time is a product, and therefore, because its values differs for each individual, suddenly people will be so productive within the 1 hour. However, first of all, we believe that time cannot be something like a product because as I will mention during my our team's last argument, time is very sacred, very important, not something that should be sold just because under the reason that they need money. But second, these people won't suddenly be very productive during 1 hour in order to gain time, because people with enough money and time, they don't need to sell any of their time, and they don't need the reason to extend their time for a certain reason. So before moving on to explaining our last team's argument, which is about the government's role for this motion, I would like to refute to the previous speaker. So first of all, she said time is important, thus price will differ from individual. So first of all, if time was such an important thing, it shouldn't be something that people would sell just like a product. But second, even if time was important, it doesn't give the justification that the price would differ, because if that value was so important, that it would be very expensive and not many people would be able to buy it. So only the rich would be able to buy it, and at last it would be only the rich who is getting the advantage from this motion. But second, she said that she talked about bodily autonomy, how people in the current status quo can do whatever they want in their daily life, and she doesn't see a reason why this only cannot apply when selling their time. First of all, it's because this is something related to their life, the length of their time, what they could do. So basically, by passing this policy, by people actually selling and buying each other's time, and they're selling their time, people can't do whatever they want, and at the end, the mechanism of bodily autonomy will also fail with their policy. But she talked about how people will work hard to sell time. So the whole purpose why people will work, suddenly be productive, will change to actually selling, to being capable to selling time instead of being able to get more money. But first of all, as I mentioned before, people who have enough money, people who don't need time, this will not make these people work productive. But second, we believe that time cannot be a product when it's the most important thing a person has when living a life. And also, she said that poor will suddenly work hard, so that the value of their 1 hour that they can actually sell to another will be more higher because they want a job. First of all, we believe that this is very irresponsible from the government team, that they are actually targeting the poor to actually work hard in order to make them sell their time just because they need money, just because they know that they need money. They're basically targeting the poor. But second, we believe, as I mentioned themselves, this will not be an incentive for the government to actually make these poor work harder, because the poor will also it will not incentivize the poor, because they also know at the end they work hard and the value of their 1 hour increases, and then they have to sell it to another person. So we believe that this cycle will just repeat without benefiting anyone. So let's move on to our last argument about the government's role. Now, so in the current status quo, Mr. and Madam Speaker, life is very valuable and sacred. It is important, the most important thing for most of the people. Now, why is this so? First of all, because life is limited, and second, we don't know when it will end for every single person, individual. But finally, as our Deputy Leader of Opposition has mentioned, it is given freely to everyone. So that is why policies and laws that are related to life are so strict and clear in the current status quo. But because it is the most important thing a person has, it is the most important right a person can have that should be protected no matter what by the government, we believe that by passing this policy, the value of life will fall. Now, however, by passing the policy that the government brought up in today's debate, people won't treat their life as such a precious or a valuable thing. So, for example, when people commit suicide, let's think about it, ladies and gentlemen. So the reason why people don't just commit suicide whenever they have a stressful event, whenever things go on not like the way they plan, is because they know there is no longer a second chance once they finish their life, and that is why they hesitate. That is why they think over and over again. Because life and time is such an important thing. Once you lose it, once you use it, then you can never have that time again. But by passing this policy, if time was something just like a product that can be bought and sold, then no one would treat their life seriously, and it will be just a joke. So if everyone is just everyone needs money, they will be suddenly selling their time due to regarding the value of 1 hour of their productivity. So when this situation is that these citizens, these people, will no longer think that the sum of their time, which is life, is precious, then we believe that it is the government's role to intervene. Now, let's give an example of things that the government intervened because they believe protecting this is more important than the citizens' right. In other words, it's saying that the right of the citizens and the government's role to protect these people conflicts, and the government also interferes and makes stricter policies or laws because they believe it is important. So these three things are banned in some countries because the government believes that it is more important to protect their citizens. First, suicide. Second, organ sales. And third, euthanasia. So first of all, suicide. Now let's give an example about Korea. So it's banned in Korea, and because the rates are increasing, especially for the teenagers, and the government made a decision that these kids don't know about and understand the value of life. The government actually strengthens the education and tries to discourage these suicide. And second, let's talk about organ sale. Now, organ sale, even though someone needs money desperately, the government doesn't let them do this because they believe that keeping their body safe, keeping their life safe is more important than getting money at that point suddenly when they need it. But finally, let's talk about the example of euthanasia. So even though that person wants to quit their life, the government knows that this person no longer do anything during their life. The government doesn't let them quit their life because they believe that life is that important and that it is that worthy that until the last moment they should not quit it. Now, what are the three characteristics of this example? That this all emphasize the importance of life. We believe that the same mechanism applies to this motion. So, although they're not taking away the whole life, a portion of time should not be taken just because they need money or just because to make people or their citizens work more work harder in that one area, 1 hour, in order to increase the value of their life. So at the end, Mr. Speaker, because it is unequal, because this policy will first of all only apply to the rich, but second, it will send a social message that life isn't something important. But finally, if it conflicts that the right of the citizens and the government's role, and if it is about protecting the citizens' life, we believe that the government has a role to interfere, and we strongly oppose the motion. Thank you.
Mr. and Madam Speakers, retailing the status quo, already indirect selling of time and indirect buying of time is already legal. We think that in the cases of where you provide labor or service to other people, you provide labor to a farmer, like an owner of a farmer, therefore that farmer is able to save time and he pays you, therefore you use your time and and therefore you earn money for that. We think that that indirect use of time and indirect buying and selling of time is already condoned in the status quo. We think that if we have the mechanism, a simple expansion of that towards a direct mechanism is not going to do any harm, and we think that the opposition simply neglected the idea, which is why we take this debate home. Now let's divide this debate into three main clashes, Mr. and Madam Speakers. The first clash is regarding is the government justified to enact this policy. The second clash is regarding who brings the better value of time. The third clash is regarding who brings the efficient use of time. But before that, let's first look into the idea of black market, Mr. and Madam Speakers. We think that even if our policy is not effective, even if under their model, our policy is not going to be enacted, we think that according to that idea, then the technology of selling and buying time exists because under that assumption, and we think that then people are going to turn to black markets because they want time and they want to save time. And we think that under their logic, then the harms will be exacerbated because you're not able to enforce the law, you're not able to enforce the regulations that we're supporting the status quo. And then they further tell us, in order to rebut to the DLO, they tell us that there's suicide, there are organ sales and euthanasia that the government currently bans, therefore is unjustified to enact this policy. Firstly, Mr. Madam Speaker, if you think that is a controversial issue itself, suicide, organ sales, euthanasia is not always legalized in every country. Don't limit this debate to South Korea. That's against the KEDC rule. In the many liberal democracies, there's also death penalty that's already legalized, Mr. and Madam Speaker. So we don't like for them to judge upon controversial issues. Secondly, Mr. and Madam Speakers, we tell you that there is no freedom of choice in this case. When you're suiciding, when you're buying and selling organs, when you're doing euthanasia, the government says that you have no rationality to choose, and therefore the bodily autonomy is not being kept. We don't think that this is the case within today's motion, which is why their idea fails. Now let's directly move on to the first clash regarding who is more justified. We told you that already in the status quo there's indirect selling and buying of time. We already have bodily autonomy. You have freedom to use your time. Therefore, using time is practically equaling to selling and buying of time, because selling and buying is one way of using your time and wealth. And they told us that this is not justified and you're not able to limit people's freedom because there's social harm. We told you, number one, that we deny the idea that there's social harm caused by under our model, because we told you that under our model, poor people will be disincentivized to rather sell their time, or then they'll be rather trying to productively work, and that was not engaged from the side opposition today. But secondly, Mr. and Madam Speakers, we think that according to your logic, people going to construction sites are also irresponsible and illegal and unjustified, Mr. and Madam Speakers. We think that when you go to a construction site, because you do not have money. And we think that if that's the case, then the corporations who make buildings are exploiting these peoples, Mr. and Madam Speakers, because you're poor. And because you get less pay when you work in construction sites, that leads to vicious cycles. And according to their logic, then you should ban that, Mr. and Madam Speakers. You already provide labor, and the people at the bottom of the social ladder do not get a lot of pay. And according to your logic, that's detrimental, but we don't think that that's bad in the status quo. So the opposition is not keeping a consistent stance with the current status quo. Therefore, their idea of bodily autonomy and freedom to use your time being violated because there is a social harm does not stand within today's debate. So we think that the first clash was taken by our side. Now the second clash, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, regarding who brings a better value of time. The ultimate question is, does putting a price tag upon time lead to the meaning of value of time, or does it lead to better valuement? They told us that time is important, therefore we cannot do this. Firstly, Mr. Madam Speakers, we tell you labor is important, your talent is important, intelligence is important, and you already allowed legalize that buying and selling of labor. You already legalized for you to utilize talent in order to earn money. And according to your logic, that's demeaning the value of labor, that's demeaning the value of talent, and that's demeaning the idea of intelligence, Mr. Speaker. We don't think that that's consistent with the status quo. Furthermore, we tell you that food is important, therefore, according to your logic, we shouldn't have a lot of food. We shouldn't legalize the buying and selling of food. We don't think that that's a good analysis coming from their side. Secondly, Mr. Madam Speakers, we think that monetary value actually leads for you to more valuement of money, of time. We think that people like money, people want to save money, because by having a lot of money, you can do a lot of things. Therefore, rich people do not have eternal money. Rich people do not have an infinite amount of money. Therefore, they want to save money, and the way to save money is to use the time efficiently. And therefore, Mr. Madam Speakers, we think that their third argument of the meaning of value of time, their idea of social message does not stand, because it works exactly opposite, and they have not engaged to this point. So I give the opposition with the burden to prove this. And then the third clash, Mr. Madam Speakers, regarding do we bring better efficient use of time. We told you in our last argument that you bring efficient use of time under our model, because now people who are willing to use that time are now going to buy that, and they're going to use that beneficial, and that's going to lead to benefits in society. And they told us that it's unjust to incentivize poor people, it's unjust to target poor people. Mr. Speaker, we think that in the current status quo, you incentivize poor people to work harder and study harder, because when you go and succeed to society, you already become a doctor, you become a lawyer, therefore this leads for you to having better money. According to that logic, then the current society's social status and the current society system is not that good, because you're targeting the poor to work hard in order to succeed and in order to earn a lot of money. We don't think that that's clear, Mr. Madam Speaker, so we think that the ideal of targeting the poor is irrelevant, not only irrelevant with this point of efficient use of time, but also irrelevant within today's debate, which is why we believe that third class was also taken by our side today. Mr. Madam Speakers, we think that already in the status quo there's indirect, illegal, buying and selling of time in the idea of labor markets and service markets. We have given opposition with the burden to prove to us why the expansion of that towards the direct method is so harmful. We give them a burden to prove, not only based upon controversial issues, not to based upon their case, upon weird ideas that's not already socially consented, but prove to us why the freedom of speech and the freedom to use your time and body autonomy does not apply within today's debate. We take this debate over, and we're extremely proud to propose. Thank you.
Next slide. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today we, the opposition, believe that we have met a government who are very ignorant and who are actually targeting the poor. So we believe that there are problems of the government policy that we are going to prove in today's debate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to right away go into the questions. The two clashes that we have in today's debate. First of all is about the effectiveness, and second clash is about the harms and the benefits. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we have stated in our argument was that first of all it is unequal, because time is the most objective thing that can decide, and what their policy is doing is actually increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. And second of all, we have talked about the social message we will send, how the value of time falls. Now, what the government side has tried to rebut to is by saying that their policy will increase the productivity. But ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it is obvious that rich people would not buy time from people who have higher productivity, because it will be expensive. So we believe that they will actually try to buy time from people who are poor, people who do not actually take part, and people who do not have productivity. So we believe that that is the problem that the government have to solve. And also we believe that this will be able to decrease productivity, because people who have higher productivity are the problem, because the rich people will not be able to buy, or rich people would not actually use their money to buy their time. So we believe that by actually decreasing the productivity, we believe that there is a problem of the government stance in today's debate. But ladies and gentlemen, what the government has asserted in today's debate is, first of all, there's freedom to use and explain the bodily autonomy, and second of all, there are increase of value of time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to rebut this, because, ladies and gentlemen, one's freedom is limited to a situation when you do not harm others. And we, the opposition, have clearly proven to you how using and earning time can actually harm others, because when you take a test, when you have same limited time to take a test, what if one person buys time? If you are the victim, you wouldn't feel actually fine, but you would feel that you're discriminated. You're getting unfair discrimination. Now, what the government side have tried to respond was by saying that going to academies isn't also a part of the discrimination, because because rich people also uses this time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that there is a significant difference, because doing an action in a limited time, we believe that that is okay, but because these people are getting more time to do so rather than other people, we believe that that is unjustifiable in today's debate. Also, we believe that their policy will also decrease the productivity, because in order to earn money, we believe that people will actually lower their high productivity in order to sell their time. Also, who would buy time from the productive workers? At the end of the day, wealthy people will buy time from the cheapest people and create a new black market, as we'll actually explain in the second clash. Now, ladies and gentlemen, their third argument was about the black market, how they will be able to actually effectively decrease the black market. But ladies and gentlemen, we believe that their policy is only actually making a new form of black market. Now, we propose that wealthy people will actually make a black market where they grow people. Now, how unjustifiable their policy is in today's debate, because wealthy people will actually try to grow people and make people do nothing and do no productivity, which means that they will actually can sell their time at a low price, and people can buy their time at a low price. So what the government is trying, because they have stated that time selling and buying is illegal, we believe that these rich people will actually try to make a new form of black market, which isn't solving the problem, but creating more problems in today's debate. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the government side didn't actually explain the standard of productivity. Just because a person actually labors doesn't mean and builds a building doesn't mean that this person has a high productivity. So we believe that the government should actually have a clear stance of what they mean by productivity. Also, ladies and gentlemen, what we have talked about in our harms and benefit clash was about value of life falls and the government's role. How life is special, how there are things that the government can interfere even when it conflicts with the citizens' rights. Now, what they have stated was that according to the opposition policy, that we should ban labor, and explain labor. But we believe that this has no significant relationship with our argument, because, ladies and gentlemen, what we explain by this is that value of life falls because these people are actually these poor people are the people who are the victims of their policy. So we believe that the poor people would be able to actually be victimized their policy, and we believe they are gonna get harms. So we believe that since their policy only increases and creates a new form of black market, which will actually form a new problem that they will have to solve in today's debate. So the government reply will actually have to answer it, and because they didn't provide a standard of productivity, which is very important, because, ladies and gentlemen, labor also has higher productivity. So are they actually gonna pay a lot for their higher productivity? And also because they didn't prove why wealthy people would start to buy time from the productive people, while they have an incentive to buy it from unproductive workers. And so because these are the problems that the government poses in today's debate, because there will be a creation of new black market, we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. and Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, okay, I visited the world of the government team for about 36 to 37 minutes today, and I was really so surprised. Why? Because in their world, time is a product, and it can be sold and bought if you have money. So also the poor are hard workers who try to increase the value of their time for 1 hour in order to gain money. Now, can this be realistic? So let's be realistic and let's see, assuming that there is the technology, this is unrealistic, not fair, and this cannot solve anything that the government team has mentioned today. So I would like to talk about 3 points as the last speaker from the opposition bench of what was very important in today's debate and how we proved that this is more important. So first of all, value of time and life and time. So in their world, time is a product, as I mentioned before. As long as you have money, you can buy it, and as long as you're rich, you can buy as many as time you want from each individuals, which have different values. However, we the opposition team has clearly told you, whether there's a technology or not, time, life is something very important, very valuable, very sacred, that this should not be something to be a product, something that someone can sell or buy because they need more time or because they have money, they have the capability. Even though it conflicts with the rights of the citizens, we believe that the government has the justification, the government has the responsibility to intervene so that these people actually don't give up their time or money. But second, let's talk about what kind of who this policy benefits. There's only one group that is possible, the rich. Why? Because even though they said the value differs, then it is obvious that the rich can buy people who have lower value at a cheaper price. So at the end, it is only going to be the rich who is actually benefiting from this policy, because whenever they need more time, whenever they need the advantage of having more time, they can actually buy time from other people who are sacrificing their time in order to make money, which is what they are very desperate for. But let's look about the final point about what this policy is going to achieve. So the government team is saying that these poor people are going to work hard in order to increase the value. But first of all, so these people have no money and they want to increase the value of their 1 hour in order to sell it to other people. They're going to work hard and then they're going to sell it. So what's the point? How is the poor getting benefit of this motion in anyhow? So this is just going to be a cycle where the poor is just working and selling their time, and at the end, it's the poor who's decreasing the length and the time of their life, and no one is going to achieve anything. But secondly, we already told you that it is not right for the government team to actually focus and target the poor and to make them actually by knowing the fact that they need money and they're desperate and they do not have jobs, the government team is actually making them work hard and then not giving any benefits to them, because at last we are sure that it is not going to benefit these poor people anyways. So at the end of the day, because life and time is very important, it's not something the government should it's not something that should be products to be bought or sold with money. But second, because this motion is very unfair, it only benefits the poor. But finally, because it can't achieve what the government team wanted, which is wanting the poor to suddenly work hard, we believe that the opposition team takes this debate home. Thank you.
Mr. Madam Speaker, as a reply speaker of the government bench, I want to look at the justification and the harms and the benefit. Now, first about the justification, told us about how time is important. Now, number one, yes, that is a good quote from like Barack Obama's biography or like Oprah Winfrey's biography, whatever that is, Mr. Madam Speaker. Within time, the importance of time is subjective to every individual. Because people have different perspective about the importance of the time, we're going to respect that different perspective, which is already respected in the status quo about the labor and the bodily autonomy, and etc. Mr. Madam Speaker, which had no engagement coming out from the opposition side. And secondly, Mr. Madam Speaker, even though the logic that the time is really important is true, Mr. Madam Speaker, that does not necessarily disprove our argument, because exactly we're going to use that sacred and important time very efficiently and maximize the value of that time, because we're going to use it most effectively and maximize the effectiveness and the efficiency, Mr. Madam Speaker. So we're going to give that important time to people who are productive and going to contribute to the whole national benefit, Mr. Madam Speaker. Let's start. They told us about how the time is objective and the rich and the poor. There was a one-liner, Mr. Madam Speaker. There was no analysis, there was no logic, so we could not really rebut to that because it's a one-liner, Mr. Madam Speaker. And also, we told you, but on the government side, we told you that the labor and how using the time is already respected and already a freedom of choice already in the status quo, but there was no engagement coming out from the opposition side. The second about the harms and the benefit. Now, first of all, he told us about how we're going to waste the time. Mr. Madam Speaker, my third argument already directly clashes with their argument because I told you about how we were going to efficiently use the time, but there was no engagement coming out from the opposition side. And secondly, how they told us how we're going to victimize the poor people because they have no choice but to sell the time. First of all, they're not going to sell the time because they have no price tag on their time because they're not doing any productive work. They do not have any salaries. Secondly, we're going to incentivize these people to use their given time by having the productive labor, productive work, and that is a responsibility of the government to increase the job pool and increase the social mobility. And thirdly, he told us about we're going to now, the opposition told us about how we're going to decrease the productivity, which had a very strange analysis that no one understood in this room. No one in this room had understood. But anyway, that is a new point coming out from the opposition with, so you shouldn't give any credit to the new points coming out from the opposition team. Now, about the black market, they gave us a new scenario, a new funny scenario about how the wealthy people are going to grow the people. Now, first of all, is there any people who can create a new people, Mr. Madam Speaker? And also, that is a new point coming out from the opposition with. So, we have no chance to rebut, so that is really unfair for us, Mr. Madam Speaker. So you shouldn't give any credit to their scenario of the black market, Mr. Madam Speaker. So at the end of the day, Mr. Madam Speaker, when they say the time is product, we told you already in the status quo, you provide the labor and the service to another person, for example, another person, and there was no engagement coming out from the opposition side because the status quo is already respecting the freedom of using your own time, utilizing your own time, and by different perspective of the importance of the time and efficiency of the time, Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that we're going to apply the same logic. So we think that time is product does not work apply in today's motion. So we think that it's not the gap between the rich and the poor because the price tag actually is not about rich and poor, but it's about the productivity. So you have to differentiate by the productive people and the unproductive people. We're going to give the time to the productive people and maximize the benefit to the whole nation and maximize the efficiency of the sacred time that they are proposing for. So we're proud to propose.